Hi. Let's talk about Fantastic Beasts and where to find them.
Musical styles are still a very important form of communication for our young people. Hi, I'm Joe Feinstein.
Fans of the Harry Potter series spent 5 long years after Deathly Hallows Part 2 waiting for the chance to see their favorite magical world on the big screen again. Rather than a continuation of the story of our main trio, Warner Brothers and David Yates ultimately decided to take a look at the past. If Harry Potter was the equivalent of the Wizarding World's World War II, then what did World War I look like? Who was the best around before the Q-tip and a funeral dress? That's where Fantastic Beasts comes in. Originally mentioned as a sort of throwaway book title within the Wizarding World, it later became an actual companion novel in 2001, later being revamped as recently as 2017. It was meant to serve not only as another helping of the gorgeous Wizarding World and the wonderful creatures who inhabit it, but also to show another period of turmoil within the magical community. As I said a moment ago, the director is David Yates, who you should know is the guy who handled the last half of the Harry Potter films. He also directed and produced that 2016 live-action remake of Tarzan, but we don't have to talk about that. James Newton Howard worked on the score, which is why it's top-notch. He's been in the game since 1992, so if you don't know who he is by now, I highly suggest you Google him. His credits are far too long for me to go through right now, but The Dark Knight. Though the cast is fairly small, it still packs a hell of a punch. Eddie Redmayne, Catherine Waterston, Colin Farrell, Alison Sudol, Ezra Miller before he went batshit insane, and last but not least, Balls of Fury's own Dan Fogler as the charming and lovable Jacob Kowalski. I'm going to get back to him in just a moment, but he's by far my favorite character in the series, hands down. Also, a quick shout out to Carmen Ejogo. She plays the magical US president, and though her part is fairly small, and will get even smaller in the next film, she's a terrific actress who's been in Selma, True Detective, and was even in Alien Covenant, which also had Catherine Waterston. Before I go any further, because I may end up doing both of the follow-up films, well, at the very least, Crimes of Grindelwald, I know that JK wrote this, okay? I know she's horrible, I get it, I'm not disputing it, I don't want to hear about it in the comments, let's just maybe shut up about it for once, okay? Let's agree to separate art, and let's just shut up about it. Deal? Okay, let's move forward. One of the best things I appreciate about the film is something we see right off the bat, and that's how it ties in Newt with the Statue of Liberty. Oftentimes, we see characters standing on, near, or next to objects that are meant to symbolize who they are. DC films actually did a pretty great job with that, with Wonder Woman standing atop Lady Justice, indicating to the audience that she's a steadfast and golden protector, or with Batman being often seen on rooftops blending into the gargoyles and shadows, showing that this stony vigilante is always quietly watching and waiting. The very opening of the film, after we get the quick shots of the newspaper articles giving you the rough idea of what's going on, is the Statue of Liberty, followed immediately by seeing Newt pass by it. Now, for those of you who don't know the poem associated with the statue, it may not be immediately clear of what it's trying to convey, but let me go ahead and fill you in. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed, sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome, her mild eyes command. The air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, she cries, with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. That declaration and commitment of taking on those others didn't want in an attempt to push forward and become something greater, that is exactly who Newt is. He cares immensely about hurt, lost, and
seriously misunderstood creatures,
and goes through incredible lengths to look after them and get them to places he knows they'll be safe and happy. Dumbledore pretty much says as much in the next film.
Do you know why I admire you, Newt? More perhaps than any man I know. You do not seek power. You simply ask, is a thing right?
But you should understand just how selfless and caring Newt is once he reveals the real reason he came to America in the first place.
So he's the real reason I came to America. To bring Frank home. He was trafficked, you see. I found him in Egypt, he was all chained up. I couldn't leave him there. Had to bring him back.
It's surprisingly refreshing to see a wizard using magical beasts and his brains to puzzle solve and defend himself as much, if not more, than using a wand. It's a great affirmation that his knowledge is truly expansive when it comes to these creatures and how they work. A lot of his dialogue about the creatures entails how either they defend themselves or survive, and he applies that knowledge at every possible turn. I've often said that protagonists fall into either the Captain America camp or the Poe camp. Now, if there's a more official name for what I'm about to describe, feel free to let me know in the comments. Characters like Captain America always know what they stand for, and rather than changing to fit the times, they stay true no matter what. Characters like Poe from Kung Fu Panda are often presented with different hurdles that make them reassess who they are and find a new resolve with their updated identity. Now, neither are bad, don't misunderstand, they're just different methods of protagonist storytelling. And I find Newt to be firmly in the former camp. Despite the obstacles in the series, he never loses sight of who he is, what he stands for, and what he cannot stand aside for. On the flip side of the protagonist coin is Jacob, my all-time favorite Wizarding World character. A man who has seen war and death, and who only wants to bring some light and happiness to himself and the world in general. He just wants to open a bakery and help his city get back to happier times after the war. And he's thrusted into this larger-than-life magical adventure, and he's not only amazed by the world he's been exposed to, he's genuinely happy to make a new friend and help save lives, whether they're beasts or people. Everything he says and does only makes me fall in love with him that much more. He's a perfect blend of campy and serious. Also, this man stood in the middle of a magical firefight in a bar and did nothing but smile and take a shot. What an absolute Chad. While we're on the Jacob subject, let me say that, holy hell, Alison Sudol and Dan Fogler have some truly fantastic on-screen chemistry. Sometimes you're asked to be drawn into a love story with two actors who seem like they don't even really want to be there. Twilight. But every single look, every line delivery, every smile exchange between these two is absolutely charming. Someone please give me a romantic comedy with these two as leads. I will cut off one of my goddamn arms to make it happen. Honestly, now that I think about it, all four of the main group have incredible chemistry together. Each of them gets their moment together, and it all comes together in the best way when they have to say goodbye to each other at the end. Now, there could also be a lot said for Credence and the way he's abused and mistreated by multiple people, because we do get a fair amount of time with that in the film itself. I just wish we got more time exploring how Credence actually felt, past his need to know where he comes from. If I had to knock the movie and the series for anything, it's for not allowing Credence actual time to be a legitimate character we should care about. Now, before I wrap up, I just want to point out a few fun tidbits of continuity I enjoyed about this film. The first of which is with Tina. When we first meet her, she's blending into a crowd, listening in on an anti-magic speech given by the B-plot villain. And when we see her, she's eating a hot dog with mustard. She takes a bite of it roughly maybe 5 minutes, 20 seconds into the film, and in the next several scenes, she's walking around with a mustard stain on her upper lip, and outside of Newt trying to point it out before he's cut off, no one actually gets the chance to address it with her. Now, I would have loved it if we got a quick shot of her realizing it and wiping it away, but it ends up happening off screen while she's walking back to her office. But either way, I still love that attention to detail. Next is the fact that if it weren't for this film, Hogwarts Legacy would have never had the in-depth magical creature care activity that it has. Sure, Thestrals, unicorns, and the Phoenix first came up in the Harry Potter series, but this film gave us a Flooper, a Grapplehorn, the Duracalls, and the Mooncalves, which are all creatures you can actively breed and take care of in the game. Also, in the book version, there's mention that the Kneasels are being taken care of by Tina and Newt. Next is something I've seen some people call a continuity error in what the characters have said and should know. When Newt and Jacob are on their way to Central Park, Newt asks,
So did you get your loan?
No.
and some people have tried to give this movie grief because it was established during the dinner scene earlier that he didn't get the money. But those same people fail to point out the number of shots that Newt is staring off into the distance looking worried during that same dinner. He's far too concerned about the beast being lost, and he's not remotely paying attention to the conversation at hand. So of course he's going to ask that question because he didn't hear it the first time. Another fun tidbit is the differences in how the US ministry runs in comparison to the UK ministry we've seen before. Now, both offices are very regal and majestic, but there are three major differences. First and foremost is that elves are employees and actually work, as opposed to being house slaves. The other is the different methods in interdepartmental communication. In Harry Potter, we see papers flying around as either paper airplanes or origami birds. Arthur Weasley even comments,
Interdepartmental memos. We used to use owls. This was unbelievable.
but in the US, they're shown as origami rats scuttling around the mail tube systems, which is just hilarious to me. Also, the third thing is the fact that in the US you have to have a license for a wand, whereas in the UK you just sort of get one when you're young and nothing's really made of it past that. There's also a quick comment from Queenie early in the film that I absolutely could not do this episode without memeing, so here you go.
That's Mr. Scamander. He's committed a serious infraction of the National Statute of Secrecy. He's a criminal?
Criminals are hot.
There's one last thing I want to quickly address before we wrap, and that is, why in the hell was Colin Farrell not chosen to be Grindelwald? He's so much more charismatic, sinister, and compelling than Johnny Depp. And don't get me wrong, I love Depp, he's done some really great work, but Farrell absolutely killed it in his role, and it's a damn shame we didn't get more time with him. Seriously, imagine him getting to act across from Jude Law. It would have been incredible. Finally, I'm just going to go on record and say that by far, the best thing of not only this film, but the series in general, is the pure, sincere friendship of Newt and Jacob. Two very well-meaning, socially awkward war veterans who find an incredible friendship and bond between the two of them. I'm really sad that the series dive-bombed the way it did, because I wanted so much more of the two of them together. But that's my 2 cents. Like I said, I may come back to the sequel, I'm not entirely sure right now, but anyway, I'm curious. What do you think?
Musical styles are still a very important form of communication for our young people. Hi, I'm Joe Feinstein.